Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here again at KAKM for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first, yesterday this was the position of Typhoon Champy, and get the bearings here. The Mariana Islands right through here, and the Philippine Sea on over to the Philippines, and southern Japan right in that area, and of course Taiwan right there. And again, this was yesterday, and looking at today's position, it moved to the northeast there and has definitely become more ragged looking, not nearly as sharp as it was yesterday, and expected to continue off to the northeast. Can get another look at it on the Northwest Pacific satellite imagery right in that position there, and you can see the moisture streaming off to the northeast, and it looks like this will move northeastward and push up toward the central Aleutians late Monday afternoon. Is that the only direction it could take? No, but it's a direction at this point. Could actually go somewhere else, but right now possibly up to the north, but not looking all that oppressive as it reaches the central Aleutians right now. On the other satellite, we've got quite a storm right here. Not yet, but it's going to develop into quite a system as this northwesterly jet interacts with all that moisture of a old tropical depression in that area, and that's going to create quite a storm that will bring gale force winds to the southern portions or the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula during the day on Sunday, and back to the west. Another system will be pushing in toward Kamchatka. Otherwise today, clouds and disturbance lifting northward here across southern Alaska, the North Gulf Coast areas, and bringing some showers into the central panhandle, but dried out down to the south there with some clearing, especially around the net. Had this low pressure area, and the front moving northward there had brought wind gusts to 35 miles per hour to Kodiak Island there today, with the front moving northward, and that's going to bring gale force winds into the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound tonight and into early tomorrow. Break right through here ahead of that system, then back into the clouds, lifting northward slowly during the day, but from much of the northern half of the state under cloudy skies, mostly cloudy conditions, and a lot of clouds out here over the northern Bering Sea, and showers from the Pribilof Islands, scattered showers down to the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, and a couple of more bands of moisture out here to the west, keeping it pretty showery along the Aleutians, mostly cloudy skies. Some breaks though over the southern Bering Sea, and there's that low center, 993 millibars there just north of the Alaska Peninsula, and the front coming right through there, just pushing up across Fognak Island and slowly into the Gulf. Here's that trough that brought the rainfall, scattered showers from the Susitna Valley eastward across Prince William Sound on the North Gulf Coast and into the northern panhandle, but high pressure drying it out down to the south, and some light snow flurries or scattered snow showers, quite light though, from the upper Yukon Valley, northern upper Yukon Valley to the northern Koyukuk Valley, and then back in toward the Kobuk. And could have been some flurries right through here, but nothing that I saw on any of the reporting stations. Had some light snow showers around the St. Lawrence Island area. And for tonight, forecast that front swings up, tightens a gradient up along the North Gulf Coast, so looking for east winds 40 knots there, and east winds increasing to 35 knots for Prince William Sound later tonight, with rain spreading in across Cook Inlet, and especially the western Cook Inlet there in the upslope part of the western Alaska Range. Also a chance of rain pushing into Yakutat and possibly Elfin Cove. Still some lingering showers up around Haines of Skagway. Then behind the front, a lot of showers from Kodiak back across Bristol Bay and scattered rain or snow showers also up here over the north or the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas, and this system bringing some showers in across the Pribilof Islands, possibly as far south as the Fox Islands there, and another batch of moisture streaming into the western Aleutians for showery conditions out in that area. Otherwise, look for some flurries up here over the northeast interior, and those gusty east winds continue on the central and eastern Arctic coast with lighter winds to the western coast there and down in across the Chukchi Sea to the Bering Strait. And looking at forecast for tomorrow, stays basically dry here across the southeast coast with partly sunny skies in the south. Still a risk of some moisture up over the northern areas, mostly west of Juneau. Probably Elfin Cove definitely looks wet from Yakutat to Cordova into the Kenai Peninsula tomorrow. Chance of rain here at times for Cook Inlet, and that extends back to the west across the Yukon or the Kuskokwim Delta, lifting north of Bristol Bay. Scattered showers from Kodiak Island into southern Bristol Bay, but some of this moisture here, mixture of rain or snow, if any moisture does reach the southern Seward Peninsula, it'll probably be in the form of snow back in towards St. Lawrence Island, and still that area of light precipitation up over the northeast interior, but again, amounts that won't be very much at all. Still brisk east winds there along the Arctic coast on the eastern areas there, with some possible clearing here off to the west. And looking still pretty showery here over the Bering Sea from the Pribilof southward, just a risk of some isolated showers around the eastern Aleutians. Then moisture streaming northward here from that developing system down to the south will bring a chance of rain to the Alaska Peninsula, and then some showers shifting southward. Still showers through into the afternoon, but decreasing there from Adak and Atka, with the bulk of the moisture hitting to the south. And then again, that system, just the pressure field with it just coming onto the map tomorrow. We'll see on Sunday. It really deepens. It doesn't move that far to the north. The front just comes onto the chart here, but definitely a big increase in the gradient. And again, gale force winds in the forecast here for the Alaska Peninsula back down toward the, I believe, the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, just some scattered showers. Actually, Sunday, look for partly sunny conditions with scattered showers for south central Alaska. Dry over the Copper River Basin, possible clearing. Dry over the southwest interior with some possible clearing. But we've got low pressure on the eastern Arctic coast and an area of light snow here from the eastern north slope across the Brooks Range into a big portion of the northwest interior here, from about the Koyukuk Valley out toward Kotzebue Sound, across the Seward Peninsula, on down to St. Lawrence Island. That's where the best chance of snow will be in the state on Sunday there. Just some isolated snow showers over the eastern interior, and still kind of showery for western Prince William Sound, and some isolated showers in the Gulf of Alaska. Kind of a weak trough in this area underneath the ridge here. And still some isolated showers, but a couple of dry days, not a bad weekend. They're definitely dry in most areas of the southeast coast, with pretty good chance of some sunshine here over the central and southern areas. And again, rain shifting northward here across the Alaska Peninsula, all the way up into the southeast Bering Sea. High pressure, lighter winds through the central Aleutians, then a very tight pressure field forecasting to bring 40 knots southeast winds into the Shimei-Attu area during the afternoon on Sunday. And for temperatures down along the southeast coast, again, mid-40s to lower 50s, 50 degrees at Sitka, same thing at Skagway. Annette had 51, 45 in Yakutat, 43 degrees this afternoon, both at Cordova and Valdez, with lower 40s through Cook Inlet, but Homer up to 47 degrees, Kodiak at 49. Gulkana just getting above freezing with 34, Northway 36 degrees, and we had 40 degrees there at Fairbanks, just 31 at Tanana, and Bettles up to 30 degrees, just under 20 both at Anatuvik and Arctic Village. Umiat 16 above, and lower 20s along the Arctic coast there, with 22 at Barrow, 23 over at Kaktovik. 26 degrees at Cape Lisburne, and then lower 30s here across Kotzebue Sound, the Seward Peninsula, 34 at Nome and Golovin, with McGrath at 33 degrees, and Amonik seeing 36, with 41 at Bethel, 43 degrees this afternoon at Sparravon, and 45 at Iliamna. And farther out to the west, lower to mid 40s over the Pribilofs, and lower 40s over the central and western Aleutians, with mid to upper 40s here over the eastern Aleutians, 49 at Unalaska. Nelson Lagoon having 49, 48 degrees there at Chignik, Falls Pass, where they picked up about 2/3 of an inch of rain today. Chignik had 48, and they got about half an inch of rain, and about 1/3 of an inch both at Kodiak and Port Graham. And for the lows tonight, looking 40s here for the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast, otherwise southern Alaska mostly in the 30s, all the way out to the west and back into the 40s for the Bristol Bay Peninsula and the Aleutians. Pretty chilly there, single numbers across the Brooks Range with teens on the Arctic coast, 20s, upper teens and 20s over the northwest interior, and about that same temperature pattern across the Tanana Valley. Highs for tomorrow, lower 40s in the mid-Tanana Valley. They're cooler to the east and cooler back to the northwest with upper 20s to lower 30s. Got mid-40s here occurring over the southern southeast coast and near 50 over the Alaska Peninsula, mid-40s out over the Aleutians. Flying weather, marginal VFR possible up over the northwest panhandle, otherwise pretty good VFR all the way down to Dixon Entrance. We've got IFR from Yakutat westward along the North Gulf Coast into western Prince William Sound. Then forecasting tomorrow afternoon, VFR from the Susitna Valley through Cook Inlet. Areas of marginal VFR possible there on Kodiak Island, and some IFR here on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range with marginal VFR over the southwest interior up into Norton Sound. The Arctic coast, just the central and western coast, kind of on the edge there, some marginal conditions, but looking VFR here over the north slope and the eastern coast. Marginal VFR all the way down to the Pribilofs, but looking VFR for most of the Aleutians. And for Anatuvik, VFR for the pass there. Adigan open as well with VFR flying conditions. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, IFR possible on both eastern approaches of both passes. And for Rainy, IFR on the eastern approach, otherwise marginal. And then for Windy, looking pretty good, VFR in the forecast for that pass. Isabel, marginal VFR. Mentasta back to VFR, and Tanita, marginal VFR, but west entrance should be VFR. And for Portage, IFR. Chilcoot and White starting out with IFR conditions early and then becoming marginal VFR from the mid to late morning hours through the afternoon. And freezing levels looking something like this. We've got 2,000 feet southward here into the western Aleutians, then back to the north across St. Lawrence Island, cutting through the central interior, 4,000 feet up over the southwest interior and through the Susitna Valley and across the northern panhandle, and then 6,000 feet up over Dixon Entrance. Icing with front coming in, could see some occasional moderate rime icing here, North Gulf Coast, Cordova, Cape Yakataga into Prince William Sound. Icing threats increase along the north coast of the Panhandle, but just a slight chance there. And then areas of icing again above about 7,000 feet here, covering most of the southwest interior, possibly as far north as Norton Sound, back to the west of St. Lawrence Island, and then down across Bristol Bay. And then we have that moisture streaming northward, bringing a chance of some icing here to the Alaska Peninsula, mainly on the southern Pacific side, and then some more icing a little bit farther out to the west, but nothing too significant. And the winds aloft, low pressure here over the western Bering Sea, kind of a big broad trough across this area. And the jets pretty strong here, 140 knots, split right in this area with a weaker branch from the southwest and across the northern panhandle, and the stronger branch down to the south into western North America. 9,000 foot winds showing southeast winds along the coast there. Ahead of that front, 20 to 35 knots, but lighter behind the system, 15 to 20 knots, with westerlies underneath this low, 15 to 25 knots, right into Bristol Bay, but light for the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And then the winds, not all that strong along the Arctic coast, 20 to 25 knots, lighter here over the northwest and northeasterlies across St. Lawrence Island. Winds turn around to the northwest out here over the western Bering Sea at about 25. And for 3,000 feet, northwest flow, central Aleutians, back up across the western Bering Sea, 20 to 25 knots there, 25 knot winds from southern Koyukuk Valley across the Seward Peninsula. Easterlies about 20 along the Arctic coast. Light southeast winds over the eastern and central interior, but up to 35 knots here. Eastern Gulf of Alaska up toward Yakutat, lighter over the Panhandle. And as far as turbulence goes, occasional or light to isolated moderate chop here along the southeast coast, up and across Prince William Sound, and then into the interior, and then westward there across the Seward Peninsula to St. Lawrence Island. Also some light to isolated moderate chop here for the Alaska Peninsula, nothing very significant at all. And the Arctic coast with those lightning winds tending to lighten up some, but still just grazing the Barrow area there. And then more turbulence here over the far western Aleutians, but the heavier stuff staying to the south. And after hangar flying, I'll be back to look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening our guest is John Bender, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Aviation, Department of Transportation, State of Alaska. John is originally from Fairbanks, went into the United States Air Force in 1987, retired from the Air Force in 2012 after a successful career flying a number of different aircraft, including the F-15C here at Elmendorf. He also had a tour of duty in South Korea. John, welcome and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Harley. Happy to be here.
I know from talking to you on various occasions, you've got a huge job that affects a lot of our viewers out there, maybe all of our viewers in some way. Mm-hmm. Can you briefly describe what your responsibilities are?
Sure. So the state of Alaska owns and operates 249 airports across the state, and that ranges everything from our small village airports in rural Alaska up to our big internationals, Anchorage and Fairbanks. Operates Anchorage and Fairbanks, we consider that our international system. It's a standalone enterprise system where they're self-sustaining through the revenue they create. The remaining 247 we consider our rural system, and that includes everything from the hub airports to the villages, and serving a huge need. 82% of our communities out there have no other means of transportation, so it's certainly a lifeline to those communities, and something we take very seriously as far as keeping year-round access to Alaska's residents.
249 airports. You used another term in a previous conversation, a certificated airport. Mm-hmm. What is that?
So a certificated airport is an FAA classification, and if you're certificated, that means you fall under Part 139 of the FARs. And the requirement here in Alaska is any carrier who's providing transportation for 30 or more passengers, passenger aircraft or jet service, then that airport must be certificated under FAA guidelines. It just means it's a higher level of service that airport provides. You have to have crash rescue available. You have higher friction requirements as far as maintaining runway surfaces, lighting, approach clearances, all those sorts of things to provide that higher level of safety and security for our airports.
So we're probably talking Juneau, Kenai?
Yes, and really any of the kind of the larger hub type airports you're thinking of, Barrow, Bethel, Dillingham, Kotzebue, Deadhorse, those type, typically where Alaska Airlines flies in, or Raven, are really the ones that drive us into a Part 139 or certificated.
So would Kenai be one or not?
It is.
Yeah, Palmer, no.
Palmer, not.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. What I really want to do is get into what I know you spend a lot of time on, and that is the situation that we are the fiscal situation that we as Alaskans and the state are in right now. I know must impact you a great deal, mm-hmm. and you probably have to make some tough choices. And when it comes to infrastructure, for example, capital projects, can you talk about that?
Sure.
How you
yes, that certainly covers almost everything we're trying to do these days, and really the financial situation provides really a forcing mechanism for us to do some things and find some efficiencies across our system that frankly we've probably needed to do for quite some time. Something specific to aviation wise is and the highways as well, is really trying to change our thought process from an expand mindset where we're expanding infrastructure capabilities across the state to really more preserving and maintaining what we have at the time. So a little bit different focus as far as capital projects go, where we're funneling our money and our resources, is making sure that what we have is going to be sustainable for years to come without necessarily looking for areas to broaden our capabilities at this point.
You had mentioned, one thing I found fascinating was, as I understand it, at one point, runway length seemed to be a driver, but are you falling off of that more towards runway surface, or tell me how that thought process works?
Sure, it's kind of a mix of the both. In the early stages of our airport system, carriers and the stakeholders were looking for a standard out there. Hey, Alaska, what are you trying to achieve across our airport system? And that was a logical question. At the time, the folks got their smart heads together and figured, hey, let's try to provide a runway surface at all of our communities that will accommodate 95% of the fleet mix that's in Alaska. And that ended up being about 3,300 feet. So for many years, that's been the standard we've been striving for. Particularly though, as resources have gotten thinner and thinner, we're getting a lot of carriers and communities asking us, hey, why are we putting money into these particular locations to expand or lengthen runways when the aircraft service that is using that runway will never need that type of a length? How come we're not putting that money into improving and maintaining the surfaces we have? So we've really shifted that focus from a statewide fleet mix to now more of a regional or district type fleet mix. So potentially, Southwest Alaska, for instance, tends to have smaller aircraft that are serving those communities. So that's an area where we don't need 3,300 feet. So it makes more sense adding more gravel here and there and potentially funneling some of those resources to other airports that have higher priority needs.
John, we've run out of time. I knew that was going to happen, but if I can get you on next time, let's pick up the conversation right there.
Sounds great.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Tune in next time. John will be back on. I think there's some other questions that come to mind, and we certainly appreciate having him on the program. And until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, this is today's ice analysis here, and the forecast through Wednesday is for the ice-free area through here to continue filling in as colder air moves over the area there. And back to the west here, the Chukchi Sea is forecast to expand west and southwest about 12 to 20 nautical miles through Wednesday as well, with the biggest southward advance here over the eastern areas where the SSTs are lower. And moving on to the marine forecasts here, small craft advisories for the north coast there, 25 to 30 knot winds with 10 to 12 foot seas, otherwise southerlies at 15 to 20 down to the south, and northerlies for Northern Lynn Canal at 15, southeast for Stevens Passage, and east for Clarence Strait. Then for Sunday, you've got kind of a squirrely wind pattern here over the inside waters with the wind speeds at about 10 to 15 knots. Otherwise, pretty light winds here along the entire coastline. Southeast at 10 for the north coast and north to northeast at the same speed for the south coast. But small craft advisory still through this area because the seas are running 9 to 10 feet. And for the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, 40 knot southeasterly winds with 15-foot seas, a pretty good gale or minimum gale in Prince William Sound with 10-foot seas. Northeasterlies at 20 knots here for Cook Inlet, and southwest 20 there for Kodiak Island. And the outlook for Sunday, small craft advisories here for Kodiak Island, easterly winds to northeast in Chillicothe Strait, and northeast at about 15 for Cook Inlet. East winds coming down to 15 knots for Prince William Sound, as well as the North Gulf Coast. And out to the west, Bristol Bay southwesterlies at 25 knots. Small craft advisories also here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, and actually those small crafts extend all the way up to Sitkinak. And then for Sunday, here come the gales. Easterlies 35 knots to 40 knots here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Small craft advisories here to the north, and east winds coming up to about 20 knots for Bristol Bay. And for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, west to southwesterlies at about 25 knots there. And central Aleutians, westerlies roughly at about 20 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas, and then small craft advisories from Adak west to Shemya. And for Sunday, with that big storm coming into the west there over toward the Komodorskis, actually Kamchatka, still the winds are going to increase to 40 knots here from the southeast for this western zone. Small craft advisories here for the central Aleutians, northerlies 25 to 30 knots, and then full gales here for the eastern Aleutians on the Pacific side. Small craft advisories to the north there with 30-knot winds. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, southwest at 20, northeast 15 north of the island, westerlies 15 for the Pribilofs, and northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, up across St. Lawrence there, northeasterlies at 20. And for Sunday, northerlies at 20 there, St. Lawrence Island into the northern Bering Sea. Small craft advisories, northerly winds picking up to 25 knots for the Pribilofs, and easterly winds here south of Nunivak Island at about 20 knots. Up along the Arctic coast, gale warnings here on the east side there, 35-knot winds, 10-foot seas, heavy freezing spray continuing from Cape Beaufort all the way to Demarcation Point, and small craft advisories here for the western Arctic coast, but lighter winds here for the western areas. And for Sunday, northerly winds, only 15 knots there from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort. Pretty light northerly winds for the central and western coast. West 25, but the eastern side here forecasting southeast 25 knots with 10-foot seas. And for tonight, gale force winds arriving on the North Gulf Coast and eventually into Prince William Sound later tonight, with rain spreading eastward there to about Yakutat, staying dry over much of the southeast coast. Showers behind the front, Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay, and some rain or snow possible here over the Yukon Delta. Otherwise, pretty dry through the Tanana Valley and back to the northwest, with showers out over the Aleutians. And for Saturday, the next big storm coming up from the south with the gale force winds of the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.